All righty. So it is 12:01. So we will get started to be mindful of time. So hello and welcome everyone to today's webisode. My name is Emily Berry. I'm a health services specialist here at Geisinger. And today I am joined by Geisinger's registered dietitian nutritionist senior, Amy Pinkham. And today we're really diving into a topic that affects every single one of us, which is nutrition. So, with so much information and also misinformation circulating online, it can be it can feel overwhelming to figure out what is truly evidence based and what is just influence or what is trending or just any noise. So, in this episode, we're going to break that all down for you. So, we'll talk about how to navigate the flood of nutritional claims that you might see on social media, how to spot credible science backed guidance, and how to make informed decisions that support your health. A lot to unpack today, and I'm excited to dig into it all. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer that the information being provided is to increase your awareness and is not intended to be medical advice. And if you believe that you may have any medical conditions or have specific questions regarding your health, we ask that you please see and talk with your physician for that. So, first and foremost, I want to welcome you, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So, to kick off our conversation today, I wanted to start with something more foundational. So, when we talk about food, wellness, and health, we often hear terms like dietitian or nutritionist, and they're used like they mean the exact same thing. And understanding the difference really matters, especially when we're looking for credible guidance about nutrition. So, to start us off here, can you explain what the difference is between a registered dietitian nutritionist, otherwise known as an RDN, or someone who is going as a nutritionist?
Yeah, so that is confusing. So I'm glad that you asked this question. So basically, the difference is the registered dietitian is a regulated term. So this is the person who had to go to school. So you had to do an undergraduate degree. You have to have a master's degree. You have to do 1,200 hours of supervised practice, and then you sit for a board exam. And then you need to be licensed before you can practice. So 6 to 7 years of school, you have to pass an exam, you need to get licensure, you have to be background checked, all of the stuff that you have to do to be licensed healthcare provider. That is the registered dietitian nutritionist. They mean the same thing. Nutritionists, on the other hand, are not necessarily, it's not a regulated term. So some people maybe went to undergrad for nutrition and maybe feel confident doing like nutrition coaching. But because it's unregulated, anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. So you, Emily, you're a health services specialist. You today could call yourself a nutritionist because you came to this webinar and start charging people all kinds of money one-on-one, go online and say, I'm a nutritionist, take my advice. So it's an unregulated term. So what that means in practice is if you are trusting someone who is a nutritionist and not a registered dietitian, maybe they don't have all of that robust evidence-based research background. They're not someone maybe who took biochemistry and understands how nutrients really affect the body and how they play a role in your disease management. So they could be giving you well-meaning advice, but it could be harming you. So a registered dietitian in a healthcare setting is doing medical nutrition therapy. They are medical nutrition therapists.
I think that is a great explanation of the difference between the two. I know sometimes it can be confusing. So, a registered dietitian, they are the professionals who spend years studying the science of how food affects the body. But yet, despite that expertise, they often find themselves competing with a very different kind of authority, ones we might know as influencers. So, why has nutritional misinformation exploded on social media?
Yeah, It's scary out there, the social media information. Um, I don't think it's always nefarious. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding of research, or maybe just not having the background of understanding how do we apply what the research says into clinical practice. That's a huge piece. So for example, we could have one study that suggests when it snows, people lose more weight. Just something random, okay? So when it snows, people lose more weight. And statistically, the weight loss is more significant than when it rains. But is that reason enough in a clinical practice to say, let's move to a snowy environment? And that is the practical application. So we see this a little bit more in like, if you take this supplement, you'll lose weight, or you'll have better, health outcomes. And maybe the weight loss that you saw when you took this vinegar supplement or whatever was 1 pound. Is that enough of a reason for you to buy an entire product when maybe your scale changes 1 pound just from using the restroom? So that clinical application might be a little bit lost from the influencers. And also there is a financial motive in influencing. So individuals who influence, their job is to sell you something, to work with brands, to get their marketers. That's their job. A bad thing, they're doing their job, but it's important to kind of realize the pattern. And the pattern is typically, here's a problem that you didn't know you had, and here's the solution. And if you use my code to buy the solution, you get a discount, right? And then I get some commission. So it's a little bit of, a money-making situation as well. And also, if we're just being very honest, there is just an overarching theme of institutional distrust that has kind of come up, where we are not trusting whatever institution. So if we're not trusting our docs, or we're not trusting healthcare, and we want to seek out a more natural approach, maybe that's where some of this audience is coming from too.
Yeah, absolutely. And social media, it continues to shape the way we think about food and health and wellness. And we're bombarded by a lot of bold claims about what we should eat, what we shouldn't eat, what we absolutely have to try if we want to feel our best, or this really works. It becomes harder to separate what's scientifically sound from what's just simply being persuasive. So, what type of nutrition claims online tend to be the most misleading or maybe even dangerous?
I get really worried about the fad diets, crash diets, any like extreme shift in your lifestyle. It doesn't take in the full kind of context of somebody's health conditions, and like blanket recommendations are not always appropriate. So, when we are doing these crash diets and these fad diets, maybe we're taking it to an extreme, and we're causing more problems than what this intervention is supposed to have addressed. So that makes me kind of nervous. So some of the really popular ones right now are keto, carnivore diet, and some of these have research-backed outcomes in certain populations under certain conditions, but they shouldn't just be blanket applied. And if someone's not looking at your medical record, you probably don't want them to be making health decisions on your behalf because they don't have your full picture. It's not individualized care.
Yeah, and I think that leads me into my next question. So, why do quick fix diets rarely lead to long-term health improvements?
Yeah. If you have to do something really extreme, I kind of have this like catchphrase like, if you can't see yourself doing it when you're 90, it's probably not a lifestyle intervention that we want to start today. right? So I probably can't see myself doing the keto diet at 90. So I probably don't want to start that today, right? Um, and then when you do these extreme shifts in your, your lifestyle, is that sustainable, right? Because we just did this huge upheaval of our habits and our routine. How long can you keep that up? And often they do a little bit of what I like to call carb manipulation. A lot of these fad diets have something in common. They make you eat a lot less carbs. And when you go under, I think it's about 100 grams of carb per day, which most of these diets kind of influence you to do in the first couple of weeks. We use it's called glycogen. It's our carb storage in our body. Because we're not eating the carb, we need to use our storage carbs. And that glycogen helps you retain a little bit of water. So when you use that water retaining capacity has gone away. So it looks like you lost weight in the induction phase of this diet, but it wasn't true fat loss. It was water loss. So they manipulate the body to look like it's being successful. And so say I try it today, and next week I'm 5 pounds less, and I'm like, this is great. And so I tell you, Emily, you have to try this. And then we have like a social contagion. But then by the time it's been 3 weeks, this is unsustainable. I realized it was water weight. I feel terrible because it's doing negative things to my body. That social contagion doesn't spread for stopping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I feel like word of mouth is really how a lot of these come about, and they stick for a lot of time, but not always long term sustainable. I think with all the products, remedies, or supplements being pushed online, fix your hormones, boost your metabolism. There's like so many. Come from people without that medical or nutritional credential, and enthusiasm a lot of the time can really overshadow the very real risks involved. So, my next question for you, Amy, is what risks come with taking either products, remedies, or supplements recommended online without medical supervision?
Yes, awesome question. So one thing to realize is that our supplement market is not regulated like our pharmaceutical market. So the pharmaceutical market, in order for a drug to hit market, it has to go through rigorous FDA testing. It has to prove that it's generally safe, that we know what the side effects are. There is not that regulation with supplements. So anybody can sell you anything and mislabel it, and there's not typically consequences until there's a mass problem that's already occurred. So I could start selling today weight loss supplements that are sugar pills, and there's no consequences to that. So because they're not regulated, we don't know in that pill, is it actually what it says it is? What else is in it? Because they don't really have to tell you everything. We don't know, is the dosage correct? What you're saying it is? And then the other thing is, how does whatever you're putting in your body, how does that cross react with the medications that you're on? How does that react with the other food you're eating? There is a toxicity level for a lot of our vitamins. You can get too much of a good thing that causes actual damage to your body. Even things that seem benign, like turmeric in 2024, and in November of 2024, a bunch of case studies came out about drug-induced liver damage from turmeric supplementation. So because it's unregulated, we don't know the dosage, we can overdose on these things. It's something that we don't want to just diagnose and intervene. But also, like, one thing that's really important to realize is a lot of these supplements are not single ingredient supplements. So, I think when we say supplements, a lot of times we're thinking about capsules in a pill bottle, right? But we're also talking about things like protein powder and pre-workout and the B vitamins in your energy drinks and, all of those different supplements. And before you know it, if you're taking a multivitamin plus your energy drink, plus your pre-workout, in your protein shake, you could be taking really high levels of some of these vitamins because they're not just protein powder, it's protein powder plus supplements. It's not just caffeine, it's caffeine plus B vitamins, right? So it's not something we want to just do willy-nilly, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's, eye-opening for me because just thinking of even myself, am I really looking at what's in everything that I am taking? So I think that's a
Mhm.
great point.
Emily, do you mind if
And
I just mention one other thing?
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Uh,
You're good.
on this topic, I just want to make sure. So for example, I want to give like a real life medical example. Okay. So you might go on Google or AI, Chat GPT, and be like, I'm fatigued. And they're going to say, maybe you have iron deficiency, right? You're going to have the symptoms of anemia. And you put in your symptoms of anemia, it says iron deficiency, and then you start taking an iron supplement. Well, there's 3 types of anemia that you can have from nutrition: iron, folate, and B12. And if you supplement with iron and it's actually a B12 deficiency, you're going to mask the symptoms, but you're not fixing the B12 deficiency, and that can cause permanent neurological damage. So you don't want to mask symptoms with supplements either, because it doesn't necessarily mean it's addressing the issue. It might be addressing the symptom from a different pathway. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yep,
Okay.
I followed you. Yep, no, that's a great point. And so with that, we were talking a little bit about fad diets earlier, moved into a little bit about supplements and different products. So when we look at things like fad diets, we're talking about those eating patterns that could be, trendy, promising things, more restrictive, um, especially because they're not designed for your body or your health needs. So bringing up an important contrast to that would be therapeutic diets. And with that, many of us on the call might not know what exactly that is. What is a therapeutic diet, and can you give some different examples of them for us?
Yeah. So a therapeutic diet is something that it's an intervention for diseases and conditions that we're using a specific eating pattern. That's what a diet is, a pattern of eating that includes a lot of nutrients that address issues and excludes things that perpetuate the issue. Okay, so that would be a therapeutic diet. Now, the person on your care team who has the education to assign a therapeutic diet to your condition is the registered dietitian. And some therapeutic diets are kind of like, I like to think of them as like over the counter, where most people, if you try this therapeutic diet, it's not going to harm you. So those would be things like the Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean DASH diet for neurological delay, or the MIND diet, the DASH diet, the Harvard Healthy Eating Plate, those types of diets. And then when you need an escalated level of care, then you get a prescription diet or a therapeutic diet, right? So over the counters like ibuprofen versus prescription pain management. Those are 2 different things, right? So when you need an escalated level of care, that's when the dietitian gets involved. And some of those therapeutic diets would be like the kidney diet, right? Depending on your stage of kidney disease. You know, consistent carbohydrate for diabetes, um, you know, uh, all those different types of therapeutic diet types.
No, I think that's a great explanation. I followed your different levels there. And with so many diets that promise like a lot of quick fixes, dramatic results, it can sometimes be hard for us to know which ones are safe, which ones are effective. So spotting those key red flags or even the green flags can help separate harmful trends from healthy, sustainable approaches. Can you go over what are some of those key red flags and green flags someone should look for when deciding whether a diet or even advice is trustworthy?
Yeah. Um, you want to know who is the source. So you want to, who's telling you this information? Are they telling you this information in the context of general education, like we're doing right now, with the disclaimer of this is not medical advice. If you need an escalated level of care, talk to your provider. Or are they, just kind of throwing something to the wind to get clicks and views? So that, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. So there are dietitians online. Like, we're trying to take this space back. So there's a few of us who are online who are trying to get the right information out there. So a good rule of thumb is, like, when I'm listening to someone, can they lose their livelihood if they lie? So if they're licensed, right, they can lose their license and their livelihood if they're telling me false information knowingly, right? So usually, even for me, like when I'm following people online, I'm trying to follow medical doctors, right, who cite their sources, who are giving standards of care and not one-off studies. So those are some of the like things to look for. Those are your green flags, okay? Your red flags is like fear mongering, telling you that, or like using extreme language like toxic, right? Things like this is toxic and you need this anecdote, selling you an anecdote, saying phrases like, your doctor doesn't want you to know this, or your dietitian doesn't want you to know this. Like, I promise you, yes, they do. If it's healthy and it's going to create a healthier body, yes, they do. Like healthcare providers, we all know, everyone here on this call knows, very smart people. They could go into technology, they could go into, business. People who are in healthcare because they want healthier humans. So they're not going to gatekeep any secrets from you. So those are the things to maybe look out for.
Yeah, and I've definitely heard that before. Your doctor doesn't want you to know this, and it's some wild, secret, and then they explain it all. So I mean, that's a great point. I've heard that many times. And well, online resources, they could be really helpful for general information, and they often can't account for individual health needs or medical conditions, potential risks. So at this point, when should someone seek out a dietitian instead of turning to the internet?
Um, Obviously, I'm always going to say always. I would never just turn to the internet for your specific case. You want someone to lay eyes on you, your diagnoses, your already in place interventions, right? What medications are you on? What does your lab work look like? Do you have physical signs of malnutrition? That's what the dietitian is doing. They're going to help you overcome those barriers, right? So you can always talk to your primary care provider about if they feel it's appropriate for you to see a dietitian and escalate care. But our primary care providers also can answer some of those baseline questions. But always, looking for good sources online too. So if you are going to look to the internet, follow the dietitians, right? Follow the people who are licensed, or look at websites like .edu, .gov, like the American Diabetes Association, people who get in trouble or there's a huge response if there's misinformation put up on their site.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think, many people always hear like, go see a dietitian, but really don't know what that experience looks like, how involved it is, or how personalized it can be. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process of working with a dietitian and what that could usually look like?
Yeah. So dietitians, like I said, we go to school for 6 years, have to pass a board exam, and we have standards of care. We are a regulated group. So we have a national licensure, and then we have state licensure. And then we have, where we work. Are we hitting certain competencies? We're very regulated, okay? And so because we are regulated, we have to follow standards of care. We have to operate within our scopes of practice. So when you go to a dietitian, especially at Geisinger, you're going to encounter the nutrition care process. And so that starts with an assessment. And some of the things that we're going to assess is, what are your vital signs say? What does your lab work look like? What medications are you on? What's your medical history? What's your family history? What is your disease risk? What's your diet history? What's your weight history? What's your environment like? Do you have a good support system? What are your barriers? Are you physically active? What is your sleep like? Are you using toxic substances? And when I say toxic, I mean like illicit drugs, like those types of things. And then we're going to assess the situation and identify if there's an appropriate nutrition diagnosis. And that is different than a medical diagnosis. It basically identifies a nutrition problem. And then we figure out where is the problem coming from and how do we know that there's a problem. So in our diagnosis, we have to prove that there's the problem. And then for every problem, there's going to be an intervention. And we're going to work with you to figure out how can we safely and effectively come up with a intervention for you. And that intervention will be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time restricted. So it's going to be a SMART goal. And it means it will actually happen because we're going to work together to make sure that that intervention is appropriate and that you're okay with the intervention. And then you're going to come back and we're going to say what worked and what didn't. And how can we overcome those barriers? Or if it was successful, are there any other things that we can address and come up with SMART goals for that? So that is the nutrition care process.
No, I think that's great because I personally haven't worked with a dietitian or anything like that, but I think it's nice to know like what is the process? What are you guys looking at? There is all these different areas coming in from sleep and activity as well, and coming up with, like you said, an intervention that'll work well for you and moving forward. And I think as we wrap up, we're almost at time today. As we wrap up, I'd like to close with any final insights that you might have, Amy. So what stands out as, your biggest takeaway from today, or do you have any remaining advice you want to share for those who might be looking to learn more about nutrition or diets or anything like that?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is the information trying to sell you something? And if it is it really applicable? Who's giving you the information? Do they profit or can they be held accountable like your physician can, your dietitian can? And ultimately, I want everybody to kind of take like 10 steps back and think of how would I behave if this was something else? So if there was an influencer and they were like, I want everybody to start taking 900 milligrams of a statin today, I would very easily be like, maybe that's not the best idea because you don't know if I even need a statin. And you don't know my dosage that's appropriate, and you don't know if I'm allergic to it or how it's going to interact with my other medications. So we want to kind of have that same attitude when it comes to nutrition, right? I don't want someone making decisions, or recommendations for an intervention when they don't even know what my problem is and they don't know what my other factors are in my in my medical case. And then the last thing that's really important is sometimes they like influencers will amplify an issue beyond its relevance and then sell you a crazy solution, even if they're not profiting. So one thing I saw online, and it makes me really sad, but the issue of body weight became so important in one influencer's mind and community that their solution was to start eating raw meat and specifically raw pork in order to get a parasite in order to lose weight. So because they put weight that high on the problems list, in their mind, it justified such an extreme solution that caused illness, right? So we need to maybe have some more clinical judgment on, is this an appropriate solution for you?
Mhm. Yeah. And yeah, that's very, eye-opening. And I think what you came here with, there's a lot of great takeaways. I feel like I learned a lot on this call. I really did enjoy it. So thank you so much for breaking everything down, Amy, and really helping to cut out a lot of the noise that we might be seeing on social media. Um, and just thank you in general for just sharing your insights today. It was a great conversation.
Of course.
And with anyone who might have questions or anything like that, you are always welcome to put them in the Q&A at any time, even after this ends. I get the notification, monitors me, and we can get you an answer, of course. To be mindful of everybody's time here. Don't forget to join us next month. We'll be discussing how addressing different social needs, such as housing, access to food, education, and those type of connections, how they can really shape health and well-being. But again, thank you so much, Amy. I love the conversation, and thank you all for listening. And hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you.